In this update, we're going to be highlighting two snowstorms as well as 2 days of severe storms. So we're really going to break down the details for you in this update. Let's first take you back of the last 7 days. These were the days right before Thanksgiving until now. We had that Arctic blast that went through the lower 48, plunging those temperatures all the way down into the deep south. A lot of those temperature anomalies stayed on the colder side. In fact, even this morning, it's still chilly on a good part of the lower 48. Look at the temperatures here around 7 o'clock this morning. Yeah, well into the 30s, all the way down into the deep south. We even had some below zero temperatures kind of showing up there in portions of Wyoming. But look at that impressive cold snap all the way down into central portions of Mississippi into Georgia. Look at even the Florida Panhandle was actually freezing this morning. Places like into Tallahassee checked in at 30 degrees. So some very colder air, even up here towards West Virginia and back into Virginia region. So yeah, much of the lower 48 is still going to be impacted from this colder weather. And let's take a look at the setup going forward, because we've got a very interesting dynamic going to be taking place. Here's the culprit. We've got a low pressure center that's just now forming off the west coast. That's actually bringing some showers in and around the San Francisco region. That will be shifting down into portions near Los Angeles later on this morning and into the afternoon time frame. But there's also two areas of winter weather advisories and winter storm watches in place up here towards the Pacific Northwest, as well as down here towards Flagstaff into Santa Fe. So let's really kind of zoom into those areas. These are winter weather advisories just outside of the Portland region, back into the Salem region, and back into Eugene, all the way down to the Medford region. We're talking areas of elevation of 3,500 feet or higher. We could be looking at 4 to 8 inches of heavy snowfall. And if you start creeping up towards the 5,000 foot range, yeah, those snows really start to elevate towards the 10 to 20 range, possibly even upwards to 30 inches up here towards into the Cascade Mountains. And as you head southbound back into Flagstaff, we have renewed winter weather advisories, and those actually swing over and start impacting portions of Santa Fe. This is that low pressure center that's going to be traversing across and then eventually head into the Albuquerque region. So those areas could easily pick up 2 to 6 inches of snowfall over the next day or two. And it's really along these areas around the Interstate 40 region that are likely going to be impacting with 2 rounds of snow over the next 24 to 48 hours. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. So let's take a look at the setup, and it's pretty dynamic heading into tomorrow on the big picture. So we have this low pressure center that's going to bring all the heavier snows towards the Cascades, bring some welcome rains back into California, swing that snow across Flagstaff and Santa Fe back into Albuquerque region. Then there's going to be a low pressure center. That's the beginning stages of our surprise snowstorm. More snow that's going to be breaking out across the Texas Panhandle back into western Oklahoma, through Kansas, as well as northwestern portions of Missouri, back into southern portions of Iowa, and eventually heading up into northern Illinois again and heading towards the Detroit region. But further south, I wanted to highlight the severe storms, because we are going to be seeing rapid changes because of this warm front lifting back out of the Gulf of Mexico. And as this lifts up, the moisture increases, and that could spell trouble on severe storms. And yes, we're talking tornadic storms as well. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center is that highlighted. This is an upgrade from yesterday with an enhanced risk down here towards southeast Texas. So they did include a marginal risk up here towards the Dallas-Fort Worth area into East Texas. But I'm not really too concerned about this activity. I think you'll get strong activity, but not really severe activity. But definitely concerned really areas along that warm front back here, likely south of the Waco region, into Conroe, Livingston, Lufkin, all the way down into Austin region, back into Victoria. Does include the Houston Metroplex down into the Galveston region. And yes, unfortunately, the air will be rotating. So we could be talking about tornadic activity. In fact, we've got a 10% chance of tornadoes within this region. This would likely be a late morning event into the afternoon. Yeah, so main areas of concern are into southeast Texas, places like into College Station, into Crockett here, into Livingston, back into Conroe, back into Columbus area. Yes, it does include the entire Houston Metroplex, all the way down to Victoria, into the Freeport region, back into Galveston. It includes the Beaumont, Port Arthur region. Those areas definitely going to have to be on high alert late tomorrow morning into tomorrow afternoon, and that activity will swing into the southeast heading into that Friday timeframe. Not as intense of what likely you're going to be seeing across southeast Texas, but still these storms could be bumpy across Lake Charles, back into New Orleans region, into Mobile, out towards Jackson, into Montgomery, and even portions of Tallahassee. And you're like, wait, pal, aren't we talking about freezing temperatures this morning? Today, and we're talking about severe storms on Friday? Yes, exactly. That's how fast the atmosphere is going to rapidly change further south. Complements of that warm front that's going to be elevating those temperatures, and this low pressure is going to be swinging across. That's going to spell trouble for severe storms. So let's break this thing down for you as far as timing on the severe weather aspect. Like I mentioned, I don't think things get going until overnight tonight, but especially into tomorrow morning. We really have to be concerned around the 10 o'clock in the morning time frame through about 4 o'clock. I think this is when we'll have a tornado watch going to be issued down here in this region across southeast Texas. This is what the radar could potentially look like about 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon on Thursday. So yeah, we could be looking at numerous showers and thunderstorms, really mainly highlighted east of the I-35 corridor, back into East Texas. Like I mentioned, these areas up here in the North Texas through southern portions of Oklahoma and back into Arkansas, you're not actually going to be near the warm front. So I'm not terribly too concerned about severe storms up here, but definitely further south where these things isolate, they could be spawning tornadoes. So you got to be high alert, especially during that 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. time frame. And once that moves off heading into tomorrow, there's that low pressure will be tracking. So this is the warm side now. We're going to be looking at precipitation right around that low pressure center, and then that tail end of that low pressure center. This is kind of a squall line that will be moving through. That's why they did have a kind of a marginal risk. So these aren't that too significant, but could be looking at some gustier winds, some pocket change hail at time. So that's why they actually included that marginal risk into play heading into that, going into tomorrow into Friday time frame. So if we break down the precipitation just over between now and Saturday morning, this is what it looks like. So we've got the low pressure center coming in off the west coast. Look at all the heavier precipitation. I talked about the snow amounts. That's why we're getting some of these 2 and 3 feet, 2 and 3 feet, 2 and 3 inches of precipitation. That's how you can get to those 10, 20, 30 inch totals up across this region. The much needed rain across outskirts of California. There's the precipitation that's going to be swinging across the Four Corners region. But yes, once it gets into Texas through Oklahoma, we're going to have that low pressure center form. It's going to be traversing right along this boundary to the south of there, closer you are to the warm front. That's where the heavier rain's going to be. So we could get some beneficial rains. These are areas that desperately need the rain. You're going to get it in a big fashion. Unfortunately, you're going to have to be dealing with some severe storms. But nonetheless, beneficial rains reach all the way back into Tennessee, into Kentucky, back into West Virginia. Lighter amounts, but still contender. And then heavier amounts as you hang up towards Illinois, back into Indiana, through Ohio. That'll eventually head up into the mid-Atlantic region up here and towards the Northeast. Now let's talk about the cold side, because we still have a cold front, and it's going to be a reinforcing shot of colder air during that Thursday night, Friday time frame. So these are Friday morning temperatures. Notice where that low pressure center right there along the Texas Panhandle, that's 21 degrees, folks. Western Oklahoma, back into Kansas, these areas are well below freezing still with that low pressure on the north side. This is the snowier side. That's with the snowstorm that we're going to be talking about, with well into the 20s across Iowa through northern Illinois, and eventually that swings up to back up to in Michigan. So here's the breakdown on the surface map on the cold side now. This is the snowstorm side of it. Yes, we've got that low pressure center is going to start to form right around the Texas Panhandle. So these areas that just get hit hard with the snow that just came off of, we're going to be hit hard again with some more heavier snow across this region into portions of the Texas Panhandle into western Oklahoma. So yeah, areas around Dalhart, just northeast of there, could get pounded with some heavier snows back into Woodward again, probably the Alva region. Those areas that get hit hard last time are probably going to get some more heavier snow. So once this swings up into Kansas, this likely gets just a little bit further north than what you saw last time, but it's going to be, this is kind of a frontogenesis type setup. It's going to be right along that cold front, and it's going to be a sharp demarcation line of heavy snow, and then you got nothing. So it's going to be a thin line, but if you're under that thin line, trust me, you're going to get some heavy snow because you got time of day to deal with. This is going to be in the overnight hours. This is going to be the coldest time of the day, and that's why most of this is going to be in the frozen variety of rain changing over to kind of a sleet slushy mix, and eventually changing over to all snow, you know, across Kansas. This will get into northern portions of northwestern portions of Missouri, back into southern portions of Iowa, and that will eventually swing over into northern Illinois as we head into Friday morning, going into late morning time frame. Pretty heavy swath of snow could be breaking out across southern portions of Iowa, northern Illinois. We're talking probably Davenport into the Dixon, Illinois region, and back into Chicago region. Those areas likely could see some heavier snows. I think this eventually sneaks into the Detroit region as this gets into possibly Friday afternoon. But there's even backside snow to this. It's kind of a trail of snow that's going to be traversing across this boundary here as it falls into the cold air. So we have a little another system that comes in on the backside, could reinforce that snow, bring you another possibly couple inches on the backside of this, heading into Friday night, going into Saturday morning. So this could be kind of a significant deal if you're underneath that. So we got the Intermountain West snow activity, and then there's that snow band that originates into the Texas Panhandle. Notice it's a thin line, but it's small and it's mighty. And if you're underneath that, look at the graph here. We could be looking at 5, 6, 8, maybe some 10-inch amounts could be coming out of this deal across this boundary into central portions of Kansas, into northwestern portions of Missouri, back into southern portions of Iowa, into northern Illinois. Those areas could be under that boundary there of that heavy snow. Then that will be the first snowstorm. Now we're talking about the second snowstorm. So as we get into early part of next week, no question the West is going to be starting to warm up big time. But as it does, we've got another plume of colder air that's going to be coming in from that northwest flow, and that's going to shift back into these areas along into the northeast and bring a renewed, even second surge of colder air in our next snowstorm that's mainly going to highlight over a good part of northern portions of PA, upstate New York, likely going to be impacting portions of Massachusetts into Vermont and New Hampshire and back into Maine. This would likely be that Monday, Tuesday, heading into that Wednesday timeframe of next week. And this one could be pretty significant up here across these regions in upstate New York, back into Massachusetts, into Vermont, and New Hampshire, into Maine. Yes, these areas could get up to 1 foot, possibly even some 18-inch amounts up there. This one could likely be some pretty hefty, heavy snows at times, with probably 1 to 2, even upwards to maybe 3-inch snowfall rates as this thing really starts to get cranking into Tuesday timeframe up there into the northeast. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.